entire time? All right. Ready?
Yes.
All right. Can we start with your first and last name? Spell it for us and your title.
Name is Troy Jester, Jester, and it's Detective Sergeant with the Fort Wayne Police Department over the Domestic Violence Unit.
All right, and we want to talk about how common domestic violence calls and disturbance calls are for you guys here at Fort Wayne Police Department.
I think when you talk about how common they are, I would say that it is daily. I would say it would be rare for an officer to go through an 8 to 8.5 hour shift and not deal with a domestic call of some sort.
And how dangerous are they? Talk to me about we're going to dive into your personal experiences, but I just want to get a brief overview of how dangerous they are to a person that you wouldn't know.
Domestic violence in itself or domestic related calls are really, there's such a wide range. Sometimes they are, sometimes the domestic call itself is kind of benign, uneventful, but you never know that till you get there. And you kind of get a chance to put eyes on the situation and see how things are. Obviously, although some are benign, some go completely in an unexpected direction, and before you know it, you have the person that you got called to help or assist is the same person you're now trying to protect yourself from. Once they see that enforcement action is going to happen or may happen, well, now you have problems from both sides and you become the target of their anger. So there is no common or normal response, and there is no common or normal situation. It truly is on a case-by-case, run-by-run basis.
So, your personal experiences, how long have you been doing this?
As an officer, I've been an officer for just shy of 25 years, and in the domestic violence unit up in Detective Bureau, just a couple months. It's been short, just since June did I finally get the opportunity to go and to work up there.
And talk to me a little bit about your personal experience with these calls. How many calls have you been to?
To say thousands is probably even an understatement. In more than 24 years times dozens of calls a week, times 24 years, it's literally thousands. There are always some calls that stick out more so than others. There's a lot of calls that I wouldn't remember because they were benign. There was nothing eventful that happened. It was more trying to counsel, trying to be a resource, trying to provide people the information they need to either, I don't want to say get along with their spouse, but to try to find a way to communicate. And that's really seems, a lot of times that's what it seems to come down to is the people that are dating or that are married. They get into relationships and they have a lot of frustration, a lot of anger, sometimes miscommunication that builds up over months, years, and we get called to fix a problem, and we have anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes to fix. They want us to fix a problem that has been in the making for sometimes years, and it's just not something that we are set up to do. It'll never be something I think that law enforcement can solve. It's always going to come down to those people. How much energy are they willing to spend with each other in working to correct or willing to fix that relationship? And many times they just want us to take care of the problem right then and there and then leave. And that's just not the way it works.
Okay, and do we want to go into any details of anything that recently may have happened or personal to you that
you can. I'm an open book, really. So I mean, if you tell me if it's something that's off limits, I'm sure I'll get my hand smacked and I'll be told no. But
just
we'll.
just how you like woke up one day and you had a domestic disturbance call and it went completely left?
There's specifically one that I remember that will always probably be with me. And first off, I grew up in a household that had domestic violence. I think that I had parents that obviously they had. I think every parent has issues. None of us are perfect, but I grew up and have, from a child's perspective, I was kind of used to being in that environment. I thought that was normal to have your father hit or push around your mother. I mean, that was normal. To be the target of the anger and the frustration sometimes, and to be hit, I thought that was normal. I thought everybody grew up with that, and I thought that was just something every child experienced. And you kind of grow up and you realize that's not. And I think you have a couple choices. You can decide that that's the way you're going to be, or you can decide that you're never going to be like that. I chose the other way. I chose to go completely the other way and say I will never do that. And it's so when you meet people, you try to help them. Sometimes you see the kids and you focus in on the kids because you wonder what their life's going to be like in 20 years from now. And we need to stop the cycle now. We don't want to be dealing with that child when they're in their mid-20s and they are now beating on their girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse. And it goes both ways. The abuser can be male or female. And it doesn't matter whether it's a straight relationship or a homosexual relationship. There's no rules when it comes to domestic violence. Anybody can be an abuser. So I did have one call, and I felt strongly about it. I had dealt with this female. I had never met the other half, but the violence seemed to be increasing, and I set up in the area because I believed that he would be back. And after a short time, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, I felt like I was being unproductive as a young officer. So I went to be on patrol and to cruise around. And I hadn't been out of the area for more than 10 minutes, and we got called back to a stabbing. And when I got there, the scene was horrific. I remember there was a young child involved that had sustained an injury to their head. In the end, they had been stabbed in the head, and the female had been stabbed multiple times. And I remember working for hours throughout the night trying to track the suspect down. And every time we would think we would have a lead on him, we would get there and he would have just left 5 minutes before we got there. And we ended up finding him, but it was gut-wrenching because you feel responsible.
And what would you guys want to say, what would you want to say to anyone that doesn't know what goes behind? We have two people over here that are really impactful team members that kind of help to, you just saw something that was really horrific. You had to come back and kind of just put all that information in and run that and do so many things and get it all to them, and they kind of work with you. So can you talk to me about how that is and what that relationship is like?
The relationship that I have with, I could not do, we could not do as a department, we could not do as a domestic violence unit, our job without the prosecutor's office, without victims assistance. To say it would be next to impossible is true. They have resources we don't have. Sometimes, although their mission statement may slightly be different than ours, our end goal is always the same, and that's to be a resource for the victims and to provide them the information and resources they need to be able to get to a safe place.
The whole purpose of this is to educate those who don't know. So what would you want to say about this unit to anyone who doesn't know, or to domestic violence survivors out there, because we are entering Domestic Violence Awareness Month?
I think if there's anything that I would really try to relate to people, try to tell people that may be reporting domestic violence for the first time, is that we hear you, we are there for you, but we cannot do it alone. At some point, we have to have your cooperation. It is so hard, not just in Indiana, but in law enforcement in general, right? It is so hard to prosecute a case when you have a victim that will not tell you the truth, they will not come forward, and there's many different reasons why they don't come forward and they don't say what's happening to them. And we understand many times why that is, and we will work tirelessly to try to get them to tell us what happened. Sometimes people reach out after years of abuse and they're scared, and they have a right to be scared. Obviously they've lived with it, but they've now reached out, and we just need them not to pull back. We need them to trust us to do our job. Let us help you. And sometimes we understand a victim may reach out and may want help, but a day later, after being back in that situation, after being back in the house, after being with that other person, the fears come back and the trepidation comes back, and then they pull back and they recant, or they change their story, and it makes it very difficult. We are still going to work for you. We're still going to do the best that we can. But if I could tell anybody anything, it would be, we have to trust each other. We have to trust each other. Let us help you. And please do not recant. Please just tell us. It may not always work out with the end result that you wanted, but we will help you get to a safe place.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to get some last names. Spell it for us. Title.
Catherine Maggart, Maggart, and I'm the Domestic Violence Coordinator with the Allen County Prosecutor's Office.
All right, and so talk to me about what you do here. What does that mean? What is your position?
As the Domestic Violence Coordinator, I work with a staff full of deputy prosecutors, paralegals, and investigators within the prosecutor's office. And I provide my services as a liaison to all local law enforcement agencies and social service agencies and advocate agencies working with victims of domestic violence crimes. I also work in the community with many different task force agents and working on educating and providing awareness services and resources to the community about domestic violence.
Okay, and talk to me about you and an officer's relationship as it pertains to when they get a domestic disturbance call.
Okay. When the police department receives a domestic violence case, we immediately start interacting at the prosecutor's office with them. We consult with one another. We share victim contact information so that we can all be on the same page as far as talking with them during this process. We do lots of training together. We train with law enforcement officers about what constitutes domestic violence crimes, and we share with them our evidence-based prosecution methods that we use in domestic violence crimes, talking about evidence collection, talking about victim and witness statements, medical records, photographs, even how to photograph a crime scene for domestic violence. All the things that will help in the long run for successful prosecution of the crime. But we work together every day. There's phone calls going back and forth every day on these types of crimes when they're occurring. And then once we receive them in the office, then we also continue that work together. So when a victim of a domestic violence crime comes in through to our office and prosecution begins, it's not just our office providing the service, it's victim assistance, it's the police department, and it's our office. They have a team full of support and services throughout that process.
Okay, and what I really have been trying to figure out how to ask this question.
Okay.
It is about because I know about statistics and knowing the exact calls is a lot to ask, but within the year, how many disturbance calls, domestic disturbance calls, have you guys seen in the last year?
In 2023, our office received 1,489 cases of misdemeanor or felony domestic violence crimes. In 2024, our office received 1,500 cases of misdemeanor or felony domestic violence crimes for prosecution.
And talk to me about, because this whole purpose of talking about this is to raise awareness, but also educate. Talk to me about how dangerous it can be for an officer to go out there and answer those calls.
The facts are the facts, and domestic violence calls are one of the most dangerous calls for law enforcement to respond to. Domestic violence, when a law enforcement officer responds to a domestic violence call, they're bringing a very public eye to a private situation. Oftentimes the abuser knows the layout of the location, and so they're going into a place that is uncertain. There could be weapons, there could be a high lethality issue, and so they are one of the most difficult crimes for them to not only investigate, but to respond to for safety purposes.
Okay, and to a person that does not know or just wants to know how to get in contact or how to get help and they're in a domestic violence situation, what should they do?
There are numerous resources that we're lucky to have in our community. First and foremost, victim assistance can be that initiating stage. They can provide information, resources, and referrals to other resources. We also have our local YWCA Women's Shelter and Outreach Program. They're wonderful services with tons of information and support. Getting in contact with these agencies does not mean that the victim has to pursue anything as far as a legal charge or the prosecution process, but they can receive information for safety planning, and they can receive information for protective orders and just general information that they may be looking for prior to exiting their situation. Providing them the information is key, and allowing them to make those choices when they're ready is the foundation of it.
Can I get your first and last name? Spell it for us and your title.
It's Kristy, Kristy, Lindeman, Lindeman, and I'm the Director of Victim Assistance with the Fort Wayne Police Department.
Okay, and talk to me about what that is.
So Victim Assistance is a unit of the Fort Wayne Police Department. We are a team of 12 social service professionals that provide victim support and advocacy for any victim of crime. The majority of the cases that we work annually are domestic violence related cases.
And talk to me about what that looks like for you daily coming in.
Daily, we pull anywhere from 150 to 200 police reports from the previous 24 hours. We are reviewing those police reports to see how many domestic related calls came in the night before. I would say over 80% of police reports that we read every morning are domestic related. Annually in Fort Wayne, we see over 10,000 calls for domestic related incidents across the year. Approximately 7,000 of those calls end up resulting in some kind of interaction with our office. And then once we talk to those victims, we get to know if they're willing to proceed with charges. If there's not been an arrest on the case, our advocates will sit down and meet with them. If they're ready to pursue charges, we'll do a referral with them. And then we determine whether that's going to be misdemeanor charges. Usually if there's a first offense or if it's not a severe incident, it's going to be a misdemeanor. If they've had previous incidents with this defendant, it may be a felony, which results in us sending it to the detective bureau. And then we work with those detectives to investigate the crime.
And what do you think is the driving issue here with people? We talked about it briefly with Troy, just about how we feel like it's boyfriend, girlfriend, that type of thing, husband, wife, those type of things. Why are we getting so many calls?
So a lot of times people just assume that it's always a call between a boyfriend or girlfriend, husband and wife. That's not always the case. Domestic calls are anyone that has a relationship in a home. But when we're talking about domestic violence specifically, we're talking about partners who have had an intimate relationship anytime in history. So it doesn't have to be a current relationship. It can be a past ex or a past boyfriend. Typically, those calls are coming in for a number of reasons. Especially since COVID, we've seen an increase in cases because of the stressors on families. That can be from a loss of income. It can be frustrations with their kids at school. It can be from just escalating issues in a relationship. Typically, they start as verbal arguments and then something escalates into somebody throwing something. Over the course of months, that can result then in somebody putting hands on each other, shoving, hitting. Currently, the last few years, we've seen a rise in strangulation in domestic cases. And strangulation is a number one indicator for potential homicide in a domestic situation. So we are doing a lot of education with youth in our community about strangulation and making sure they understand the dangers, that it's not a fad and it can be very dangerous for them.
Okay, and is there anything else that you'd like to add that I may have missed?
I would just say that one of the best things I think about Fort Wayne is that we have law enforcement-based victim services. So our advocates are able to get involved as soon as a crime occurs. There's no waiting period between an incident occurring and an advocate being assigned to their case. Advocates are there to educate them, to walk them through what the criminal justice system looks like, to help them understand safety planning, making sure that they have a plan moving forward. If someone's not ready yet to pursue charges, we can at least set them up with counseling or case management from one of our partner agencies in the community and just make sure they have the tools that they need so that when they are ready to pursue, they have an outlet that they can contact, even if that's not us or if it's not the police department, there's somebody that they're able to reach out to for that safety component. Domestic violence is so common, and a lot of times people who are in domestic violence don't realize it. Domestic violence does not have to look like physical violence. It can be mental, it can be emotional, it can be financial. Anytime that a person is trying to control a situation or an individual, that is considered a form of domestic violence. Typically, we see it start out really subtly with manipulation, with a lot of mind control. And then over the course of time, it escalates into physical violence. And usually by the time it gets there, you have been in it for so long, you don't realize it. That's why a lot of times victims have a hard time leaving, because they have started out a relationship with someone that they think is good, and they go back to that and they think, oh, that person for the first 2 years of our marriage was so great, or the first 2 years of our relationship, they bought me flowers and they gave me gifts and they took me out to dinner, and that's what I want back. And so they go back to that good time and they keep thinking it'll get better or it'll go back to that. So a lot of times it's not necessarily that victims want to stay in an abusive relationship, but they want that partner back that they had in the beginning. We also see a lot of factors like children who are involved, parents who eventually are single and maybe not working or don't have the money to live on their own. So there's so many things that happen in domestic violence that cause it to be a complex issue. I think what I would want the community to know and understand is that it's very easy to place judgment on a person when we see somebody getting hit or being physically abused and saying, like, why wouldn't you leave? But there's just so many things that are unknown that you can't make a prediction on, you can't make a snap judgment on. And really what everyone needs to do is just be there to provide support and provide a trusting relationship with a person that when it gets bad enough, they have somebody that they can trust to reach out to that can help connect them to services like victim assistance, like Kathy at our prosecutor's office, or a trusted law enforcement officer that can help get involved, walk them through the situation, and hopefully get justice for them in the long run.